What's going on, guys? Hope everybody's doing well. Today we're going to be checking out some of the differences between the Ruger LCP and the Ruger LCP2. But before we do that, I want to give a big thank you to my buddy Chris over at F&F Firearms for sending out the Ruger LCP. He had one laying around he said he really wasn't planning on doing anything with, so he went ahead and sent it out so we can do a few comparison videos. F&F Firearms mainly specializes in 80% firearm builds, so they carry everything from polymer 80 frames, Glock completion kits, custom slides and barrels, and they also carry everything needed to complete your 80% 6-hour P320, including X5 build kits, so be sure to check them out. Now let's jump into these two guns. So first of all, they are both single stack 380s, mainly designed to be a pocket pistol, and there are a lot of guys out there that say these are both basically the same gun, which they are to some degree, but at the same time there are a lot of differences which we're going to be going over in this video. So first things first, let's go ahead and talk about a few things that are similar between these two. So when you get your LCP or your LCP2, it is going to come with a 6-round magazine. These are both 6-round guns. 6 plus 1, you could hold 7 rounds in the gun. The magazines are identical, and this one here is an LCP2 mag. You can tell because of the texturing on the bottom of the mag, where on the LCP there is no texturing at all. And like I said, the mags are compatible with one another, so that is something that I thought was pretty cool of Ruger to do. If you already have an LCP and you want to upgrade to the LCP2, you don't need to run out and buy a bunch of different mags. Now besides the magazines, the only other thing that's really going to be the same is the disassembly and reassembly of the guns. Both very easy to do with this one pin right here. No big deal there, so the assembly and disassembly is going to be exactly the same. Now let's talk about a few things that are different between these two guns, which is going to be majority of everything on the gun, and we'll go ahead and start with the frame. So both of these guns are tiny, as you guys can see. They fit in the palm of my hand. They are designed to be pocket guns, but right off the bat, the first thing I noticed was the LCP2 here on the right is just a little bit thicker than the original LCP. Personally, I really like that. It helps you get a little bit better of a grip on the gun. It helps with recoil. Overall, I think it was a great idea of Ruger to increase the width of the gun just a little bit. While we're on the frame, let's talk a little bit about the texturing. So there is obviously a huge difference in the texturing on these two guns. On the first generation LCP, it has almost like a dimpled effect, and no matter what, this is not a fun gun to shoot. Neither of these guns are guns that you're going to take to the range and burn up 200 or 300 rounds. It's just not going to happen. They are not comfortable. That's really not what they're designed for. But on the Ruger LCP, we have like this dimpling. Up here on the front strap, we have a few lines. Almost, it's not checkering because there's only lines going one way. And then besides that, that is about it. On the Ruger LCP2, we almost have like this stippling, and I personally really like it with these grooves in here. It is a very comfortable gun for the size. On the front strap, we also have a little bit of stippling, so Ruger got rid of those grooves. I personally like that a lot. And then on the back, they did increase the size of their little patch of stippling or dimpling compared to the LCP1. Now, as I said earlier, neither of these guns are fun to shoot, and that is a fact. But on the Ruger LCP2, just like the LCP1, they did include a little channel right here for your thumb to rest, so that makes it a little bit more ergonomic. I mean, the channel on the first LCP, which would be right here where it says Ruger, isn't bad. It really isn't bad at all for the size of the gun, but I personally do think that the channel on the LCP2 is just a little bit better. And one thing I forgot to point out on the texturing of the LCP2 is up here on the trigger guard, there also is a little bit of texturing. I don't shoot like this, but I know some guys that do. They wrap their finger around that trigger guard. I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that, but Ruger did give you the option to do that if that's something you'd like to do. Now moving down to the magazine release, both of them have very similar magazine releases. I do feel like the LCP2 does protrude just a little bit more, and maybe that's the way the frame was designed. They kind of cut out a little bit bigger of a spot than they did on the first generation LCP, and that is something that I personally like. Now let's move up on the gun, and the only thing that's really going to be different here is your slide stop. So as you can see, the slide stop on the first generation LCP is just a little tiny thing, and it barely sticks out from the side of the gun. It is really a pain in the ass to get a hold of. Where on the LCP2, they did make it a little bit longer, a little bit skinnier, but it also sticks out from the gun just a little bit more, making it a hell of a lot easier to get a hold of. Now, one of the most noticeable differences is going to be up here on the slide. So as you can see on the first generation LCP, we have, you know, just some regular typical serrations that you're going to see on a lot of different guns. And on the LCP2, they kind of made these at a forward angle, and they also put some front cocking serrations on here, which I personally really like. If you're the type of guy that likes to do, you know, press check or even rack your slide from the front of the gun, which I've got really used to doing since a lot of my guns have front serrations now, that is something I thought was pretty cool of Ruger to do. Now, also on the slide, a big difference with this gun and also a big advantage is going to be the sights. So both of these sights are milled right out of the slide, but as you can see, the Ruger LCP sights are a lot slimmer and a lot smaller than the LCP2, but in my opinion, this isn't going to be an issue with snagging, anything like that, because they still milled it out and made it very, very smooth on the LCP2, so I think that is a big advantage. Now on the LCP2, they also made the front sight have a few serrations in it where the LCP1 does not, so I went ahead and put a little bit of orange nail polish on there just to help me pick up on the sight a little bit easier. While we're talking about the slide, another thing that I want to bring up, and this isn't too big of a deal, it may be for some people though, depending on who buys this gun. On the first generation LCP, the slide really isn't that easy to rack. You hit that barrel and it really wants to get caught up right there. So that is something I know like my wife kind of saw a problem with. Where on the LCP2, it really is very, very easy to rack, and to most people out there, I guess this won't be a big deal, but if you are a female shooter or you have a disability of some sort, or if you're just weaker in general, maybe a new shooter, this is something that would stand out to you. Now, another similarity that I see between these two is going to be the barrels. Now, both barrels are obviously, you know, 380 barrels, but I can't see any difference between the two. If anything, the Ruger LCP2 might be a hair longer, but not much. Either way, I don't see a big deal if it is slightly longer than the LCP. Now let's talk a little bit about the triggers in both of these guns, and this was a big selling point for Ruger with the LCP2. If any of you guys have handled or own a Ruger LCP, you know that the trigger in this gun is horrendous. And this trigger here comes in right about 7 pounds. But let me show you what I really dislike about this trigger. So we'll go ahead and reset it. And you heard that click. You would think that the trigger would reset, but as you can see, there is nothing. You go out for one more click and that does reset the trigger. I know when I was shooting this gun for the first time, I kept letting it reset and I would go to pull and have a dead trigger, and I really didn't understand what was going on until I sat down, looked at the gun, and figured out that you have to wait for 2 of those clicks. Now this trigger does pull about 7 pounds. Maybe the more I shoot it, it will get broken in a little bit, but I'm guaranteeing it's gonna stay right around that 7-pound marker. Where on the Ruger LCP2, not only did Ruger add a trigger safety, and it's kind of like an enlarged Glock safety if you guys could see that there, but this trigger comes in right around 6 pounds. Now this trigger is a huge improvement from the first generation LCP trigger. Not that it's like a buttery smooth 1911 trigger or an aftermarket Glock trigger, nothing like that, but for a little gun like this, it really isn't too bad. So we hit our wall. Very crisp break, and it is really a nice and crisp break. And there's our reset right there, and we are good to go. So the trigger on the LCP2 is a big improvement from the first generation LCP. Now another thing with the LCP2 that I like a lot more than the first generation LCP, let me go ahead and put a magazine in here and a magazine in here. The LCP2 has last round hold open. Now I'm personally a big fan of this. Say you're out at the range, blowing through rounds, it is nice to know when you are empty. With the LCP, you're basically gonna keep pulling the trigger if you're not counting your rounds. I personally count my rounds quite a bit, but every now and then I will go in for another trigger squeeze and there will be nothing there. So on the LCP2, as you can see, we have our last round hold open. That is a feature that's I don't know if it's a big deal to a lot of people, but I personally think it was a nice touch of Ruger to add to this gun. Now let's talk a little bit about aftermarket support for both of these guns. Now with the Ruger LCP that F&F Firearms sent over, he also included this Viridian laser, and I do like it. I did have it on the LCP, but it does not work with the holster that he sent with it, which is a Blade Tech. And this is an IWB holster, fits right on your belt. It really is a super small and slim package, so I definitely like that. But I couldn't personally see carrying this on my belt. It is just way too small. Honestly, the LCP lineup for me personally isn't going to be a gun that I carry all the time. Every now and then I will throw one of these in my pocket. My wife will carry one of them in her purse when she concealed carries, and that is pretty much the purpose behind these guns. I typically like to carry my LCP2 in a pocket holster, and this one here is from Renaissance Firearms, and I really like it because it has that curve on there that fits right around your leg when it is in your pocket, and he does make these holsters for lefties, righties, and just about whatever color you want. A few things that are new to the lineup over at Renaissance Firearms that Chip has sent out are going to be these mag carriers for the LCP. This one here is an inside the waistband, and this one is an outside the waistband. And what's really cool about these mag carriers is each of them have two of the Tolster MRDs, which are gonna be these little things right here. You can basically adjust your retention from there instead of having to, loosen and tighten every single screw on the holster. So each of them hold 2 magazines. I thought this was a pretty cool little thing. If you do carry a Ruger LCP, or even if you are gonna pocket carry this or just take it with you in general, drop one of these in the car. You could fit one of these in a cargo pocket, or if your wife carries, put one of these in her purse. These are available at Renaissance Firearms. I thought these were pretty neat, and we may go ahead and give one of these away soon here on Instagram. So if you guys are on Instagram, be sure to follow me, GlockGuy226. While we're on the topic of magazines, let's talk a little bit about magazine options and magazine extensions for the Ruger LCP lineup. The first one we're going to take a look at is a new offering from Ruger, and they just dropped this a few months ago, but I really do like this thing because it looks absolutely sick. In the Ruger LCP2, they made it so this would match the grip perfectly, and I think Ruger did an awesome job. This brings our magazine from a 6-round magazine to a 7-round, so this gun is now a 7+1, 8 rounds in the gun. And yes, it is a little bit longer, but personally, I always shoot this gun at least with the pinky extension. If not, it is a pain in the ass to hold on to. And I do want to point out that this 7-round magazine comes from Ruger just like this. I don't know if you can order just the base pad. Last I knew, you had to order the magazine with the base pad. Really not a big deal there. It is an awesome little magazine to carry around, even if you carry it as your spare mag. And it does fit into the Ruger LCP. It just doesn't look near as good as it does in the LCP2. It was definitely made for the LCP2 to match up with that grip. Now, another mag extension that I really like, and this one you can order just as a mag extension and then add it onto your existing magazines, the Hive Plus 2. Now, I just ordered this probably about 6 weeks ago. It is fairly new to the market. I have ran about 6 full magazines through this, and this is a plus 2, so this would be bringing the magazine to 8 rounds, now making this gun an 8+1, so we could have 9 rounds in the gun with this plus 2. I think it looks good. It fits the hand good, and it really does make for a much better range experience if you take this thing out to shoot with a plus 2. Just having somewhere to place that pinky while you're shooting makes for a much better experience. And as you can see, it does look pretty good in the LCP1, but it is a much better fit for the Ruger LCP2. Those are available at hive.com. I really can't recall the price exactly, but it is nice that you can order just the base pad and add it to your magazines. So with everything we talked about in this video, I personally am a bigger fan of the LCP2 just because of some of the options out there. It is a little bit more comfortable to fire at the range. I really do like the trigger and the front serrations compared to the LCP, but that doesn't mean the LCP is a bad gun. These are both awesome options for a pocket pistol. I truly believe everybody should have a cheaper, small pocket pistol to carry every now and then. Sometimes if you're going to a wedding or whatever the case may be, you may need a small package to conceal 110%, and both of these guns are great options. And as far as price goes, they both are right around $200. I've seen both of them go for like $230, as well as both of them be on sale for like $175, maybe even a little bit less. So we're gonna go ahead and say they are both in the $200 price range. Now, if any of you guys own a Ruger LCP or an LCP2, definitely let me know how you like it down in the comment section below. And if any of you guys have any questions on either of these guns or any of the upgrades, holsters, magazines that we talked about, definitely leave it down in the comment section as well. But that's gonna wrap it up on these two guns. So once again, I wanna give Chris over F&F Firearms a huge thank you. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.